Mr. Speaker. So recently I just watched a movie called Secret Superstar, and in that movie it's an Indian movie. So the woman is just a housewife, and just because of his lack of the financial support from the outside, and he is also trapped by his husband in the home. So at that moment he suffered a lot from the violence. The wife is suffered a lot from the husband's violence. So at that moment, she just has no way to fight against the husband, and also she's considered as a servant in the family instead of a mom who can educate their students, who can educate their children, and who just share the responsibility and share the respect from their children. So actually, her situation is similar to a lot of women who suffer from the stereotype entrenched in the society in India. So in a lot of countries like India, Mali, Iraq, so such kind of countries, there are a large gender gap between those two groups. Sorry, later. So they are viewed as a productive tool rather than a member of the family. So based on this, we think our government should give them a policy to let those to give some money to incentivize to motivate the male to be the house husband in the family, to identify with women, to have the
Inequality comes from the fact that males have control of the economic resources of the household. Then why make this gap even bigger by not incentivizing women, but rather give more money to the men?
Because we think this is just a superficial problem within the society, but there are more problems within the society. Why the man can't understand? Why the man should get the mainstream economy, like the religion or etc. etc. And I will explain those reasons and why our government case can solve the problems in the following speech. So then, firstly, talk about my policy. There are three layers of analysis. Firstly, we will let the government have the department and let to decide the budgets that should give the money to the males directly. And second, this money will just equals to the average level of salary within the society. That's to say, we will let most of the males think it's a fair trade-off between giving up their job and becoming a housing husband. And thirdly, we will let the department have get the reports from the males themselves. That's to say, we will just supervise them to let them not use this policy as a way to gather some money from the government. So further later, clarification.
Yes. So you're saying that the males in that country will decide for themselves how good is that worthy trade-off for their jobs, right?
Males in themselves will decide for themselves.
So are you saying that the males in that country will decide for themselves?
No. I just say the government will give the budget, and undoubtedly the government will also involve some female members in this decision-making process. So then, the principle of our government side is that the basic important factor in the society is the family, and the gender role in the family should also pay a lot of attention. We want to solve two problems in the status quo. Firstly, we want to solve the absolute inferiority that female shares in the family status quo. We want to reach a country. We want to reach a state which has a gender equality. And second, we want to keep the growth of the family, the nuclear family, become smooth. That's to say, we want to let the gender role become stable within the society, and let the share of responsibilities within family make contributions to both the male and female, and also their children, etc. etc. So, firstly, I will prove to you why it's efficient of our policy, and second, I will prove to you why becoming a house husband is so important for male. So, moving to the first layer, why is it so efficient? Actually, we think the problems in the status quo, those countries who have a gap between the male and female, those problems can't be naturally saved without the interference from the government. Why is it so? Firstly, these countries sometimes they have the religious belief. That's to say,
in that circumstances, there's social stigmatization and religious stigmatization against men working as house husbands. And under your trade, in which they receive average pay, which men will take the deal?
So actually, that's the reason why I want to say why the money can be a very practical incentive for them. Because secondly, those countries they are just some poor countries. They have a large base of the poverty. That's to say, the money will give them the direct incentive to let them move into this status quo. So secondly, why being a house husband is so important to change the stereotype. Firstly, for the males, they will take the responsibility that the women have in the society. For example, they need to help their babies, to feed their babies, or just to do some family chores in this circumstance. So just because they will identify with women and know how many hard works they need to do in the family. The reason why sometimes the stereotypes occur is because that the male just thinks earning the money is much more harder than taking no more pure I thank you, than taking the responsibility within the family. So if we put them in the real status quo and let them know how hard the work the women have in the status quo, they will identify with them, and the misunderstanding just will diminish. And secondly, they will show their no more pure I thank you, and they will show more responsibility. They will show them more responsibility that goes to women directly. That's to say, they will have more engagement with children. So what's the problem within status quo? That's to say, sometimes the men just lack of the education and a lack of the communication between their children. Just as I mentioned in the movie that Secret Superstar, the male father, the male father, he just doesn't have any communication with their children. So if we let them become the housing husband, they will have more engagement with their children and let the children in the growth of their growth just both have the motherhood and the fatherhood, and let the family relationship become complete, and let them have a balanced development of the family as a whole. And secondly, this policy will also make contributions to the change of the women's situation. Why is it so? Because as the male share the responsibilities that need to be shouldered by the female, that's to say, the female will be released from those shackles put on them. That's to say, it will also give them a motivation to move out of the family to do some work that male are supposed to do, because the male and female's responsibility and their role in the society is reconstructed in our policy. Then, as the women has more opportunities to go out of the family, they will have more opportunities to achieve their potentialities. They will have the potentialities to change the social narrative. For example, they will have the opportunities to become a politician, to do a lot of things, make contributions to the society, to change the stereotypes that women are naturally inferior to men. So based on this, I've already proved to you why our policy is effective and can make contributions to the whole society as a whole. And also, I proved to you why becoming a housing husband is so important for both the male and the women. So based on this, very proud to propose.
Next, Prime Minister, and I call the Leader of Opposition.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, a vast majority of the substantive material that came out from the affirmative side is premised on the idea that many men within these conservative societies are going to accept this proposal. What you need to understand, Mr. Speaker, is that the vast majority of people, if they do accept this proposal, are going to be characteristic as the following. They are either going to be poor, or they are going to be extremely moderate within those societies. We think that, first of all, these two characteristics are not characteristics of the majority of men within these societies. If economic opportunities are biased towards men within these regions, then the poor, there's going to be a lower possibility for these men to be poor to begin with, let alone the fact that since opportunities are provided to them being moderates. But let's take them at their best case scenario. Under these circumstances, and where there are situations in where men do actually accept these proposals, the missing link existing within the affirmative side was upon why the existence or the acceptance of this choice directly leads to changing within the conservative people within the society. Because according to their logic, if the family members or this family construction is what directly leads to individuals understanding that like women are really going through difficult times, then this link is non-existent towards the people who don't accept this proposal, which is the vast majority of instances. Therefore, the effectiveness of their policy is very, very low to begin with. I'm going to provide you one substantive material regarding the principle of why this motion is misogynist and directly goes against female ideals to begin with. But before I go into that substantive material, let me engage to what the Prime Minister has already discussed upon. Their entire premise was upon the idea that individual people are going to identify with women. We think there are going to be two case scenarios, even under circumstances where conservative people actually accept this proposal. Number one, they're going to feel that this is actually easy, and therefore this work isn't really something to complain about. And therefore, because people consider this work to be easy, they're going to blame women and say that they're whining about their rights and the increasing amount of rights within status quo. And we think that this isn't necessarily going to change their perspectives, this is actually going to increase oppression. But second of all, under the case circumstance and where they perceive it to be difficult work, we also think that this is problematic, primarily because if you perceive it to be difficult, then this is work that shouldn't necessarily be distributed to men within society, but rather it should be distributed towards women, and therefore it should be a sacred sector within society where women actually take the bulk of the work. We think that both case scenarios are problematic, and therefore the entire premise of the affirmative side doesn't necessarily exist. Then they discussed upon how like women are going to relate with children, they're going to spend more time with their children, and as a consequence of this allows women the opportunity to go into other fields of society, such as being a politician. The problem with this argument is that it is premised on the idea that the only barrier that exists within women becoming politicians or becoming board of directors in other companies is the lack of opportunity and the lack of time to become that politician or to become that board of director member. We don't necessarily think that's the case, because the characteristics within misogynist societies is that women are intrinsically inferior and they don't deserve to be within those positions, and there's a huge barrier other than the lack of time or other than the lack of opportunity existed within these societies. So therefore, as a result, even if women have the time in order to become politicians and go into those areas, there is going to be a lack of opportunity provided to these people, and therefore, as a result, the benefits of the affirmative side are actually not going to exist. Let's move on to my own substantive material, which is going to be a three-layered analysis upon why it goes against feminist ideals. First of all, we think that this sends out a notion that women or feminist ideals or feminist movements are intrinsically at the hands of men changing their behavior. We think that this is problematic, because if women want to really be liberated and emancipated within status quo, then movements should be conducted by individual women, instead of governments doing a top-down approach and forcing men to change their behaviors in accordance to and catering to the necessities of women within status quo. That's exactly what the affirmative side is proposing, because only in circumstances in where men voluntarily choose to become in those roles, that's the point in where women have an opportunity or even a chance to become like other members of society, which is also very difficult to begin with. So therefore, on the first layer of ground, we think that this is intrinsically problematic. But second of all, we also believe that considering the characteristics of the affirmatives model, this is problematic. Why? Because as our point of information has already mentioned, you are not paying women in circumstances. You are only exclusively paying men. We think that this is problematic on multiple accords, right? But this is extremely problematic for women who accept social statuses, but they want to receive respect on those aspects. So in other words, women who like wearing the hijab within those societies, and they accept that this is certain like statuses that they should receive, but it is based on their choices. They wish to become those types of choices. And this also applies to women who wish to become housewives within status quo. However, the moment in where you pass this policy, there's going to be a problematic notion, because now under this circumstance, only men are going to receive compensation, meaning that in order to do this line of work, you require an incentive. You need to be compensated in order to do this work, while as compared to women, women don't need these compensations. Women don't need to be compensated in order to conduct this work. So therefore, this creates a notion that men are conducting undesirable work because you need an additional push. You need additional encouragement in order for men to conduct that work. So the very notion of undesirability exists within our status quo, under their status quo, primarily because you are focusing on trying to ensure that men are conducting these activities. And therefore, as a result, we think that this is problematic on multiple notions, and therefore, this is something that we do not want to promote under our side of the house. Third of all, let's discuss upon how it alienates the moderates under their proposal, or if we pass this motion. Mr. Speaker, as you already know, since you're the CAP and you created this motion was intended within the context of extremely conservative societies. So there are examples of places like India, places like Iraq are also applicant under these circumstances. We think that moderates in status quo have an incentive to a certain extent in order to accept this motion, right? Because they're moderates. They agree on like women liberation or emancipation. We think that this is problematic because the moment in where you allow this motion to pass, that's the point in where men who voluntarily become house husbands because of their emancipation purposes now get criticized within society. Now they get extreme amounts of scrutiny, primarily because men who are supposed to fulfill the role of like women emancipation are now going to be perceived in society based on monetary incentives. In other words, if you don't become you are conducting these activities not because of your like willingness to change women rights, but it's primarily because of like economic incentives. And therefore, due to this scrutiny, we think that a lot of people are not going to be willing to join in, even if you are a particular moderate. But we think that the moderates are extremely important in order for the furtherment of women's rights in general, because you need empathetic people. You need men within society in order to coerce political like pressure or create social movements in order to change the women perception at the end of the day. So therefore, because it alienates the moderates and because this is primarily contradictory to women's roles or like feminist ideals in general, we're proud to oppose.
Next, O and Paul Lee.
Great.